Hello, today our group will present about our research topic. The topic is Study of Budgeting System in Public University. Here's my group member name. My name is Asriq bin Raduan. Okay. First of all, budgeting system has been evolved in Malaysia. Latest change is from modified budgeting system to outcome-based budgeting system. This system has been introduced since 2010. And since then, all the public sector entities using this type of budgeting system with their own type of policies and framework following their suitability. This system was objectively to align the spending to governmental set of priorities and to enhancing accountability and transparency. The objective of our research is, first, to identify the change has occurred during budgeting system reform. Second is to identify what result management approach being invented by university. Third is to analyze the effectiveness framework in analyzing the result and to recommend the effective framework in developing framework for result-based budgeting. Okay, next. This is the review of budgeting process of University Malaysia Sarawak. Okay, for public sector, we focus on public universities, specifically UNIMAS and specifically spending for student program. As we can see from the table there, it is the flow chart for approving budget for program expense from preparing the proposal till the last is for student representative council to identify which is the best program that being done by student. And then the budget for total expense yearly for student program is set in the yearly budget meeting, and it is strictly can't exceed the amount that has been set up in the meeting.
Okay, hello everyone. My name is Ranti Bayang, and this is the literature review for our project. Okay, the first one is outcome-based budgeting. Outcome-based budgeting that is seen as an effective and efficient strategy towards the stabilization of economic growth. This is based on Malaysian Treasury 2013. Okay, OBB implementation is more likely focusing on the outcome. It is valued as strategic planning and performance measurement. Due to strategic reform initiative, also known as SRI, taken by the government, outcome-based budgeting requires public sector spending to be aligned behind an approved set of governmental priorities emphasized in improving access into education minister. The effectiveness of a program conducted is important in achieving the outcomes that is seen as the performance measurement. Okay, that is all. Okay, hello everyone. This is the second literature review, that is result-based management. Result-based management is characterized and orienting all behavior and resources used to obtain specifically specified and demonstrable outcome. RBM increased the transparency and accountability, allowing for complementary intervention and avoiding overlap waste. Good planning helps to concentrate resources allocation and subsequent implementation on relevant results. Okay, this is the RBM cycle. As you can see, it starts out with planning, to monitoring and evaluation, and it goes around again to start the process. Okay, this is the suggested framework for result-based management in public sector. It starts out with strategic planning, resources allocation and budgeting. 2, selecting targets and indicators. Next, to establishing the governance structure for implementation. 2, monitoring, measuring and analyzing the performance result. 2, evaluating result and getting feedback. And it starts out the process again. It reviews planning, budgeting, implementation, monitoring and evaluation of a country and their relationship. The component of which is most related with the characteristic of defined finding is called the best component. Although result-oriented characteristic and attributes are defined, such as concept can be implemented in a region, type of government, or stage of growth. In this ideal condition, when reporting to their respective consistent regulatory bodies, government, and various civil society organizations may claim mutual responsibility for development outcome based on OGSR in 2013. Okay, this is the last literature review regarding public sector accounting. Accountants, it is defined as accountants for public sector or research, that is PSAR, operate from various perspectives. PSA reformation is also requested by internal organization for the growth of the company. Global organizations have been voicing questions about the introduction of public sector reform in developed world since 1980, based on Hikari at 2013. Not only emerging countries but also developed nations are concerned about the introduction of the revised accounting for public sector. Okay, that is all from me today. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Diandra Romauldus Rayner Joseph, and I will present to you the research and methodology used to conduct this study. So, the implementation of OBB in UNIMAS is to improve the allocation of funding through a greater efficiency management in UNIMAS events and programs. The programs conducted in UNIMAS are the indicators to decide on the appropriation of budget allocation. Through this study, we emphasize more on the performance measurement of events. Through evaluation, we could assess on the achievement or failure of a program. As you can see on the screen, this is the well-structured monitoring and evaluation framework that we formed. The flowchart of outcome-based budgeting framework, starting with the programs, and then the performance, and the outcomes. The research design. A qualitative and quantitative type of research methodology was used to conduct this study. So this is the first approach we use, which is the qualitative type of methodology. So based on LODIA 2017, this qualitative approach focuses towards the in-depth analysis of corporate behaviors and processes. The primary data collection that we use is the semi-structured interview. So, as suggested by Myers 2013, the techniques of data collection have to be in accordance with the research methodology. So, the nature of qualitative, the semi-structured interview, we had prepared a list of questions to be asked during the interview, but will not adhere to them strictly, thus giving the flexibility to explore new inquiry during the interview process. As the word of semi-structured interview itself explained that the interviewer does not bound strictly to the formalized set of questions. Even with the current station of Perintah Kawalan Pergerakan Pemulihan (KPP), as announced by our government, the primary reason for conducting the face-to-face interview was that we believe it was an effective way of communication. Due to that, we live apart from each other. The interview season was performed by one of our group members living in Kuching. The successful interview season was conducted with one of the assistant of the UNIMAS registration officers who is directly engaged in approving students' budgetary proposal program on specific subject, idea, or matter, as suggested by Sekaran 2003. So, the interview season takes about 23 minutes, was recorded on audio devices in which we have transferred into the files, and contemporaneous notes were made consequently. So, this is the second approach that we use to conduct in our study. So, this survey was using the qualitative approach. It is described, the qualitative approach is described as investigation performed systematically, statistically, mathematically, and the make use of computational technique towards quantifiable data collection. So the primary data collection that we use is through questionnaires. We form a Google form for easier tracing and observation. It is distributed via email, WhatsApp, and messengers to UNIMAS students, current UNIMAS students, and alumni that is been actively involved towards handling any events within UNIMAS. And we aware of its budgeting, and they are aware of its budgeting practices and processes. So at the end of the day, 50 successful respondents has been respond to our questionnaires Google form, in which will be explained later in the findings. So basically, the questionnaires Google form consists of 4 sections, which includes section 1 is the controlling, section 2 regarding the evaluation process, section 3 regarding monitoring and effectiveness of budgetary practices, and the last section is regarding the recommendation of effective framework for results-based management. Overall, there are 12 simple questions that is written in English. Using some of the questions are using 5-point Likert scale from 1 strongly disagree to 5 strongly agree, and the use of multi-choice questions, MCQ style. And at the end of the data collection, the presentation of data, which will be explained in the findings later, will be in the form of graph and table, followed by the explanation of the analysis. So the data collection process for the semi-structured interview: first, the questions preparation, and then cross-check information for staffs and management in charge for the budgeting allocation in UNIMAS. Then we contacted the internal person who have deep knowledge about UNIMAS staffs and management. And then one of our members that is living in Kuching went to UNIMAS to perform the interview and requested to meet the UNIMAS register officer. However, he only managed to meet the assistant in charge due to the non-availability at the office. So the interview season was recorded, the voice over interview season using audio recorder, and consequently taking notes using laptop during the interview. Lastly, compilation of data and information collected during interview, and the cross-check with notes, rewrite the scripts on a new paper, in which we transferred it to a computer later. The survey questionnaires on the right side first gathered existing information and form draft questionnaires, in which we perform research on secondary data collection through internet and so on. Then we recheck and cross-reference, created Google form questionnaires, contacted selected students via phone, WhatsApp, Telegram, and Messenger, while we explain the purpose of study and convince them to participate. And then when we expose our purpose of study, we distribute the survey questionnaires which has been finalized. And we aim for 50 students before the Google form questionnaires been closed. And lastly, after successful respondents responded from the respondents, students, and alumni, in which we have aimed for the alumni and current students of UNIMAS who had been actively involved in the events and programs and a way of the budgeting practice in UNIMAS. And then we compile the data and perform analysis. That is all from me. Thank you.
Hello everyone, I'm Lismarie Togang, metric number 56474. Here is the result findings and data presentation of our research. As mentioned earlier by Diandra, we use qualitative and quantitative analysis. For qualitative analysis, our main findings were specifically divided into 3 parts. The first part is budgeting proposal approval. Second, monitoring and evaluating process effectiveness. And the third one is the transparency of budgeting allocation. Based on the 3 parts, we found out that the process of monitoring and evaluating, as well as the transparency level, are contravened with OBB reformation, as UNIMAS do not emphasize comprehensively into the implementation of OBB. It is there, but not yet achieved the OBB objectives. For quantitative analysis, we had presented the data using bar charts, tables, and pie charts. Since we use Likert scale to gather the responses, we analyzed the data and described it with positive, negative, and neutral survey responses. Through the data, we can get valuable information in terms of quality, information completeness, and timeliness. We had identified the questionnaires into 4 parts. The first part is controlling, in which we want to assess the degree to which UNIMAS process in approving the program budget proposal. In overall view, for controlling part, most of the respondents were agreed with UNIMA's process in approving the program budget proposal. The cost charge for activity expenses is based on the rate of expenses specification provided by the Treasury Committee. A proposed program with expenditure higher than 2,000 ringgit required program director to present in front of TNC, as well as no additional budget will be allocated, although there is high potential outcomes for the program. Second part is the evaluation process to determine UNIMA's framework in evaluating the program outcomes. All the respondents were agreed with the program evaluation made by registration officer, which only concentrated to achieve their KPI but not the results of the program. We found that this finding is contradicting with OBB reformation, where result is measured as the objectives of OBB. The third part is monitoring and effectiveness of budgetary practices, which aim to evaluate UNIMA's way of monitoring towards the program, and how well is the accountability and transparency over the budget spending information to the public. In this part, most of the respondents were disagreed on the monitoring effectiveness of budgetary practices being implemented by UNIMAS. In order to increase the accountability and transparency, the respondents requested UNIMAS to make the budget information spending available to the public. Lastly is the recommendation of effective framework for result-based management part that aim to determine the respondent opinion on current budgetary practices. Besides that, how well the comprehensive of OBB implementation lead to desired outcomes as the budgeting system. The first question in this part was to identify the common problems UNIMA's budgeting system approach, if the system implemented only focusing in achieving team management KPI and not the results performance. Mostly, the respondents mentioned that audited framework and lack of transparency and accountability will be the common problems that lead to undesirable outcomes, whereby OBB should has increased the transparency and accountability in terms of budget activities, and public has the rights to know the information for better decision making. Next figure is to state the best budgeting practices for public universities. And the respondents stated long-term goals and outcomes quality is the best, and continuous improvement through frequently monitoring will be the best budgeting practices for public universities. In the last question, we had identified that the respondents agreed on the quality of budget expenditure management, which reflected the best expected achievement of implementing OBB for program effectiveness, and overall, the respondents were agreed with UNIMA's current management budget practices, in which we can conclude that these findings were not aligned with the reformation of OBB that had been introduced by the government. That's all from me. Thank you.
Okay, for conclusion part, reformation of budgeting system is very important to determine the progressive level of organization to enhance the accountability of the practices in every level. For this research, we identified that public university spending for students' activity has not been critically analyzed based on the performance outcome due to non-profit organization. Second, students were trained to raise funds by themselves. Third is low budget were given, making that no need critical monitoring of program performance. And also, the current system policies and framework need to change because of outdated system that being used by them. Okay, next suggestion is to increase the accountability. They should include the monitoring performance for long term, yearly, for example, for the program that invented by student. Lastly is they should invent a software to monitor the budget spending for efficiency in evaluation performance at all levels. Okay, that's all for our group. Thank you for listening to us and have a nice day.